Gerald.
She's just having a really, really hard time. She called last night.
Okay. This microphone is a trick. You never know when it's going to. I had it on mute, but while we were talking, it come on, so I don't know. It's off mute now, but I don't trust it. If you're going to say something, Tom, or anything, and you don't want anybody to hear, you better just take this off and lay it someplace, because it'll trick you for some reason. I don't know why, but it's good to have everyone out this morning. Thankful you're here, and it went from snow to almost summer, seems like, and that's our weather here. We may go back to cold. You never know between now and when summer actually comes. So I've got one announcement here that I'll read before we start, and then we'll get everybody's. Norma Joe's great niece, Nina Gerard, has requested prayers to help her deal with the loss of her mother. She's having a hard time, Norma Joe said, dealing with this, and just a struggle right now. So let's remember her in our prayers, Norma Joe's great niece. Are there other announcements that need to be made this morning before we start? Yes.
Remember, Mark, Billy Trusty's family, he passed away yesterday. Friend of mine.
Billy Trusty passed away yesterday. Okay. Remember him. Nancy had a cousin, Ralph Tyra, that passed away also. Want to remember that family. Are there others that need to be remembered? Yes.
Russ's mom, my stepdad's mom, has been moved to rehab.
Okay. Russ's mom has been moved to rehab in Windsor Care, so let's keep her in our prayers. Hopefully things will work out and improvement will be made there. Yes, Kenny?
My brother just found out when he had a stroke a couple of weeks ago, he's got a hole in his heart, so he'll have heart surgery.
Okay, Kenny's brother will have heart surgery to repair a hole in his heart. Had a stroke a couple of weeks ago, and will have to have surgery to repair that. So let's remember Kenny's brother in our prayers. Want to continue to remember Christine in her prayers and keep her in our prayers at this time. Yes, Tom? Barry Brewer's in critical condition. He's had a time here, and want to remember him and his family in our prayers. Also, Doug Trent's mom is back in ICU. Want to remember her and Doug and his family in our prayers. Are there others? Okay. Kenny, would you mind
Our Father in God, we thank you for this opportunity we have today to be able to come together on the first day of the week. Father, we've heard the transmission here this morning, and we always have individuals that were not wishing us well, that are praying for grief. We also know of others that are struggling with various problems. Father, we're especially concerned about those that are spiritually sick, those that
it's going to have to go. Cindy, I don't know now. You were going to sit just a little farther away. She's coming down with something. I've been able to keep mine on for most lessons, but this morning, for some reason, I'm a little warm, a little muggy this morning. So, I've been talking about encouragement and different ways we can encourage people, different ways we're encouraged, how we can be better encouragers. This morning we're going to talk about the eyes of an encourager. There's several, I know, and here in our assembly that have trouble with their eyes. It's just a problem that some deal with. I know. Seems like the older we get, the more trouble we have with our eyes. But we're going to look at the eyes. Mostly, we're going to deal with our spiritual eyes, or spiritual blindness that comes. That sometimes we just fail to see what's around us and how that we can help those around us. Our eyes are one of our most valued body parts. We value our eyes greatly. When our eyes are working correctly, we can see things far and we can see them near. We can see distant planets to grains of sand when everything's working good. An encourager uses his eyes to communicate interest and compassion to others. If I'm talking too loud or not loud enough, for some reason this ear is not working just right this morning, so I don't know where I'm at on volume, so you all correct me if I'm not where I need to be. Spiritual blindness. Sight is one of, if not the most precious of our senses. But a far greater than physical blindness is the danger of spiritual blindness. If you would turn to John chapter 9. We'll start in verse 1. In John chapter 9, starting in verse 1. Now as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither this man nor his parents sinned, but that the works of God should be revealed in him. I must work the works of him who sent me while it is day. The night is coming when no one can work. As long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. When he had said these things, he spat on the ground and made clay with the saliva. And he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. And he said to him, Go wash in the pool of Siloam. So he went and washed and came back seeing. Skip on down to, we'll start in verse 39 of the same chapter. And Jesus said, For judgment I have come into the world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. Then some of the Pharisees who were with him heard these words and said to him, Are we blind also? And Jesus said, If you were blind, you would have no sin. But now you say, we see, therefore your sin remains. Our eyes are pretty amazing in a lot of ways. We can see in bright light most of the time, or we can see in a dim light. But what happens if there's absence of light? There's no light at all. Total blindness. We can't see, can we? Can't see anything. He said that no one can see life clearly without knowing Him. Those in spiritual darkness believe they can see, but their image of the world is draped in sin. They wander through life oblivious to sin. Do we see that today? I think of these really smart people according to worldly knowledge. One who passed away not long ago, Stephen Hawking, was considered to be one of the smartest men in our age, and yet, could he see? He was blind, wasn't he? He was blind to our spiritual needs. Any comments on this before we move along? Yes, Dan.
The things that we read from Scripture, help us see so many things from God's perspective. And without that, I know, not growing up in a Christian home and not having a Bible, not reading a Bible, there are a lot of things that I did not see. I did not understand a lot of things, especially eternal things. I had no concept at all of eternal things. I had no eternal perspective at all of realizing there was life beyond here, and actually it's just the beginning. And so, I think of how these scriptures that Jesus, we've got His Word and the words that the Spirit spoke through the apostles to enlighten us and help us to see the spiritual things we need to see from God's perspective.
Yes.
And which corrects our blindness and helps us to see the way God would have us to see. Really, that's what all these scriptures are about. It's reminding us of where we need to be spiritually. We're not seeing things correctly. Our perspective is off.
Yes.
Our eyesight is off spiritually. And so that is a big, the Word of God has been a great insight to help correct that for me personally.
It's easy, isn't it? To be caught up in the world's things, and we become short-sighted, I guess, and we can't see what's coming, can we? And I know just the years that I've lived, and I know some of you all will say the same thing. It's went like that. It's passing so fast, and if we're not careful, we go through life, and then all of a sudden it's over. And where are we at? Where have we got to? Have we kept our mind and our eyes focused on the Lord, or are we focused on things of this world? And so many times it's easy to focus on the things that we see here physically.
We've come to accepting of what's in the world. When you think back, when I was a child, there were things that you didn't say, you didn't talk about, and now it's common conversation pieces.
Yes.
And nobody is ashamed of a lot of these things anymore, so we've become blinded to what is right.
I think we've accepted the world's vision of what of where we're at. We've accepted that this is it. This is all we've got to think about is right here, don't we? I mean, a lot of times, Dan.
A phrase that came to mind was an Old Testament phrase. Many times the prophets used it, but they would talk about that's not right in the sight of God. That's through God's seeing this. It's not right. And so, obviously man sees it differently than God sees it, but there's things in God's sight that we need to see.
We need to see through His sight, through His Scripture, don't we? He tells us how we need to see.
All these things that Brother Kilpatrick talked about Wednesday night, we have just totally forgotten.
Yes.
And we've become blinded because it sounds good, it looks good, and why not do it? Well, we're risking our souls by accepting all of these things. And there's so much of it going on out there. And that's where all these different religious groups are coming from, because they interpret the way they want to. And then we're caught up in it, and we have to be very, very careful.
Yes. So many things, and a lot of the older ones here can attest to that. Some of us, I got in on maybe the back end of some of the things that the church was divided over several years ago, but sometimes if we're not careful, we make those same mistakes over again. And I think that's some of the things he was talking about too. If we're not careful and don't learn from our past, we make those same mistakes over and over. And we're that way as humans, and our spiritual life can be that way if we're not careful. When we step down into the waters of baptism, we enter that pool of Siloam all over again. Paul said that those who emerge from the watery grave rise to walk in newness of life. And that's in Romans 6:4. And that's a verse that many that we know, but we will. Therefore, we are buried with him through baptism into death, just as Christ was raised from the dead by the glory of the Father. Even so, we should also walk in newness of life. So when we come out of this water of baptism, we're a new creature, aren't we? We have a whole new perspective. When we enter Christ in baptism, we're born all over again. It's just like we're a new creature. So what's that do for us in perspective? If I'm, say right now, if I come to Christ and I turn to Christ, how do I see Nancy now as compared as before? Do I see her differently? Yeah, somebody of worth and somebody of eternal, and somebody that can hopefully help me to reach my eternal purpose. That's right. I mean, we see them different. What about our children? Those of you that have younger children, how do you see them as now as a Christian in a new light? How would we see our children? Or even me at this age, if I look back and see my children, how do I see? There again, there's something special there. I need to be working on getting them towards that goal. We need to get them, as David Shannon said, it's our kids are almost like an airplane, and we're the ones that's directing them to this end destination. they veer off, don't they? Airplanes don't stay just exactly on that path, do they? They get off, but then they correct. And they get off this side and they correct. And I think our kids are the same way. They'll get from side to side, but we correct them so they'll get to that end goal. How about our in-laws? They're trouble, aren't they? Our in-laws are trouble. But how do we see them as Christians? Not as an in-law. We see them also as souls. We see them as a being that has a soul that is going to live eternally someplace. And don't get me wrong, I love my in-laws, and Nancy knows that. But sometimes they get a bad rap, don't they?
Well, and if for some reason you feel like one of your in-laws is an enemy toward you, Christ tells us we're having His vision to pray for them.
Yes.
And that's going to help us love them.
Going to help us love them more if we do as He says, isn't it? If we just dwell on, well, they're this. But like Cindy says, I think we got to focus on praying for them and praying that they'll see the light, and praying for me that I will have the right attitude towards my in-laws. And I think that's another outlook that we'll have after we see spiritually. Now,
we have to accept them as part of the family, our in-laws.
yes.
They become part of our family. I mean, we're just like we take somebody into the church, they're baptized, and they're part of the family, and we're supposed to love them and treat them as we treat our family.
Yes. We love them and treat them just like they are our family, and which they are.
You don't marry just the person.
No,
You really marry the whole family.
you do.
And if there's a problem before that marriage, that needs to be solved.
Yes. Our neighbors, our neighbors are a blessing in most cases, and some cases they can be a hindrance to us. But we see them in a different way. Our boss, I think a lot of times we see them as almost like the enemy. Our boss is, he's trying to get me do things I don't want to do, and even though, in our whole job, our way of looking at our job is we work as we're working towards God. Even our enemies. Before we're Christians, what are our enemies to us? They're just that, aren't they? They're our enemies. We want nothing to do with them. If there's anything that we can do before we become a Christian against them, we're going to do it. We're going to make it as hard on our enemies as we can. But God tells us our enemies, we must love them. We must strive to help them and bring them to Christ. Everything is looked at in a totally new way. We can see the goal and the purpose for life for the first time after we see that light of Christ. We see different people, worldly people, sing Amazing Grace. We see that and see, but as a Christian, what should that mean to us? To sing Amazing Grace. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Spiritually, this should mean so much more to us as Christians than it would to some singer just singing it to make a sound, because we're singing it to God. Although the great physician, he healed the blind man. Christ healed the blind man. Could he heal the Pharisees?
They didn't want healed.
Do-
They didn't want healed.
They didn't want to be healed, did they? So Christ can heal, and he can heal anything, but he will not heal against your will. He's not going to make you see the light if you don't want to see the light. He didn't lack the power to heal them, did he? But they refused to acknowledge being sick, and they didn't need help. They didn't need his help. The Pharisees didn't see themselves as blind, but as leaders of the blind, didn't they? They thought they were leading these ignorant people. They were leaders of the blind. What happened to those that trusted these men to lead them towards heaven? What happened to these people if they trusted these Pharisees and didn't trust in Christ, didn't trust in what Christ told them? What happens to the blind if the blind lead the blind? They both fall in the ditch. They were leading them all right. They led them, but they didn't lead them in Christ's way, did they?
I think he also said something like, you make them a greater son of hell than you yourself are.
Twofold, yeah.
1923.
Yeah, they made them even worse than they were before they started, didn't they? Any comments? Other comments?
I think, you get on a point, the willingness to see. When Jesus taught the parable of the sower, there were individuals who got distracted because of their circumstance, suffering, and they forgot all about what God had said, and they left it. And then he talked about those who once followed God, but they let the world, the cares, the riches, those things of the world choke out. They quit following, but it was the good soil that it fell on, and they continued on understanding and seeing the things they should see to the point that they produced fruit.
They did,
And
yes.
each produced different amounts of fruit, depending on that individual. But the idea of, there are going to be some that they once saw. They saw things at one time, but something distracted them. But it is that good soul that lets that word, that understand what God is saying to them,
Yes.
as God intended, and they produce the fruit God, produces in them or through them. So, the willingness, I think part of it is that willingness.
Willingness to see and follow.
Willingness on our part. We said the Pharisees were unwilling to listen. They rejected Jesus. They refused to listen to his teaching.
Yes.
So,
These Pharisees, in a lot of things, they taught things that were right. They did teach things that were right. But yet, they loved the praise of men rather than to give that praise to God, didn't they? They wanted that to themselves. And I think that happens to us a lot of times today in our worship. We look at what I can get. It's all coming towards me instead of going towards God. And when we worship to God. And there is benefits to us, but our main focus of worship is God. And these Pharisees wanted that for themselves.
The Pharisees were so blind, determined to be blind, that they saw Jesus doing amazing miracles.
Yes.
And they decided instead of giving God credit and saying he was a man of God and from God, maybe perhaps the Messiah, they said he was the son of the devil.
Yes.
And so
Yeah, they had decided, you're right, the sin had covered them, hadn't it? And that's kind of what the spiritual eye disease, it's like cataracts that cloud our vision and interfere with a person's daily activities. Sin can obscure the ability to see other people and life's opportunities in a healthful way. When we live in sin, we are self-centered and only think of what we want instead of putting what others need before us. Defects of the eyes, such as nearsightedness and farsightedness, are debilitating, and without proper treatment can be devastating to us. Short-sightedness spiritually, in a spiritual sense, occurs when a person has no vision of the future and nothing to guide his actions. And farsightedness, the person is unable to see his present circumstances and closest relationships, but imagine that things are better for everyone else than him. I think we're that way. America, for some reason, I don't know what happens to us, but for some reason we're that way. It's the grass is always greener on the other side with us a lot of times. We look at others and we want what others have instead of trying to do what we can do to help others. Learning to focus. The eye's ability to focus is an amazing feature, and it talked about being able to focus, even moving or turning our head, we can still focus on things, and it is amazing. And I don't understand how a phone works, let alone how the eye can work. I just can't comprehend that. But God has made us amazingly. Learning to focus is one of the key skills needed by good encouragers. Many things catch people's attention, but individuals are free to choose what they concentrate on, and that's what Cindy was talking about with the Pharisees. They chose not to see Christ. They chose that. What about a student in the classroom? He's got a choice to make, don't he? He can listen to the speaker. You all can listen to me. You can talk to somebody next to you. You can ignore me, doodle, pass notes, daydream. Any more text, I guess. You can text and not listen. Or Facebook is a favorite pastime anymore. You can do that. Sights and sounds compete for our attention, yet we will focus primarily on one. If Nancy's talking to me and I'm sitting here watching TV or something, where's my attention going? Probably the TV, isn't it? It shouldn't be, and sometimes we probably just need to turn it off or turn whatever we're going to focus on, we've got to concentrate on that. They say women are multitaskers. I guess they can do it. I don't know. Maybe some men can't. I can't. I'm a one track. I'm either concentrating on here or there, and it's not. I can't do both good at all. Discouragers unconsciously focus on the negative, while encouragers consciously focus on the positive. What we choose will impact our ability to relate effectively. What we choose helps us to relate effectively. We can choose Christ. We can choose, or yet we can choose things of the world. Our ability to see the good in people and situations is a cornerstone of encouragement. How easy is it to see the bad and focus on the bad in people? Is that easy? How easy is it to focus on the good? I think it depends on the person a lot of times. We tend to focus on things that are bad or things that we may take in a certain way, and it offends us, and that person is off my list. I'm done. You know, we must be encouragers. We must look for the bright side. Does it happen accidentally that we focus on being an encourager or focus on the good things? Is that easy?
Somehow we tend to be negative. I don't know why, but we just tend to be that way. We need to focus more on positive things and the things that Christ has taught, and perhaps we won't be as negative.
If we want to be more positive and want to be more encouraging, turn off the TV. Shut the phone off and don't be looking at the news and don't be looking at all the things on there. Open your Bible and read the Bible, and we'll be more encouraging. The media makes its living on publicizing the worst in people and society. And I see that every morning. I'm one, when I get up in the morning, I think the first thing I go to is the coffee pot. I'll turn it on, and then I'll turn the news on. But how much good is there usually in the news that we see? We're getting ready to get into, we're already into it, but political campaigns. and I don't want to get into this is right and that is wrong, but I'm just saying in general, what is political campaigns made of? Negativity. It's not what am I going to do or what am I going to do. It's Kenny, oh me, you can't believe what he's for this. He's right on line with this one over here. He's everything. I mean, and anymore it's got to the point, and we know this. It's got to the point that it's not. It don't even have to be truth. You just say it. You just point it, and that's the way it is. You know, well, this is the way it is. And I think we see these things, and we see nitpicking and fault finding all around us, don't we? I mean, it's just it's everywhere. It's and I think that's part of the reason why we're like that, Norma Joe. I think if you see this daily, when you go to work, I mean, these people are a lot of them are worldly people that are watching things and seeing things and the negative things, and what are they going to talk about?
They come on TV, the media and everything, and they lie, stand up there and lie to the whole world. On TV, and people still sit and watch it. Tell these things or change it to the way they want it to sound, and people eat it up. I don't understand that. It's
easy for us to concentrate on. It's almost like it's it says here discouragement is more contagious than the flu, and it is contagious because what we hear And it spreads through words, looks, and attitudes. And we hear this continually. And when we're at work, it's the boss, he treats us awful. You know, he gives so-and-so a raise. He didn't give me a raise. Instead of being happy that so-and-so may have got a raise, it's all about me, isn't it? And I think a lot of times it is contagious. And if we get started with this looking for faults, if we get started fault finding, or as he said, mote hunting, are we mote hunting? Are we looking for the mote in our brother's eye? Is that what we're straining? Am I straining to see something bad in Tom? Or am I striving to see the good in Tom and striving to encourage Tom and him encourage me? There again, I think if us as Christians, if us as the church could do more of that, more encouragement, more looking for the good in others, how would we grow here? We could grow greatly, couldn't we? By just looking for the good. Is it easy? No. There's too many around us that are the other way. It's easy to fall right into that, finding the faults. Christians are stewards of their relationships. People have been placed in our circle for us to encourage to follow the Lord. How often do we encourage people that we meet to follow the Lord? Instead of falling in with them and running somebody else down, or falling in with them and discourage them even further, how many do we encourage that we work with to follow the Lord?
Fear rejection. That's one of the reasons that we don't talk to someone about Christ, is because we're going to hear all of their reasons why not, and we just fear that we can't handle it, we can't talk back to it.
Yeah.
But even among our brothers and sisters in the congregation, we can often be so self-focused that, we don't give encouragement to the younger Christians or people who are struggling, or maybe just, where we're really investing our time and efforts, to actually encourage people who are struggling. That is what we as a family are supposed to be doing.
Yes. As Christians, we need to look. We need to look at the positive. We need to look at the end. We need to focus on the end. As Kenny said last week when we give out the Bibles to the babies, we need to focus. We have to focus on our children. Where do we want them to be? And we need to look past where do we want them to be, maybe physically, their jobs, these things will come. These things will come with time. But let's look past that and look, where do we want them to be spiritually? In 10, 20, 15, and then into eternity. Where do we want our children to be? And I know I have, in past, I have got lost in that shuffle because that's where everybody's going. Everybody's wanting their kid to be the one making the $100,000 or the $200,000 a year, and that's not even anything anymore. But we want our kids to be, and there's nothing wrong with that, to be there. But let's not lose focus on what's important. Our spiritual needs are important. Our kids' spiritual needs are the most important that we can teach them or train them in. Any comments or questions? Dan?
Just starting out as a new Christian, I was in a congregation about this size. It was about 350 people. And, there were basically, you were talking about focus. There were some people I didn't really know after I left there. They were kind of neutral. They never really said anything positive. They never said anything negative. So I really, just really never had an impact on me, I guess you could say. They were neutral. And then you had a small portion, I can tell it rather quickly, that could see nothing but negative in me because I was coming not from a Christian home. They weren't too welcoming of that. And they really wanted kids around me, those few people. But then there was a larger portion, a percentage that, they took an interest in me. They involved me in things, and you could tell from their focus they could see something. Not where you are, but where you could be. And so it was through those individuals that I developed, and it was through those individuals that kept me active, and it was those individuals that encouraged me in many ways. So, in a congregation, you're either neutral, or you're looking down on people, or you're building people up, and you're helping them be everything God wants them to be. And I'm thankful that people in the congregation, I had plenty that did that, even though there were some I didn't really know one way or another. And there were just a few that were rather negative toward me as a new Christian.
And where do we want to be as Christians in this class? Where do, like you say, somebody that's new, you look, I don't know if do I want to fool with them or not? And at that time, I'm sure there was things that you had been involved that people knew, and but they seen what they wanted to see in you in the future, did they?
In addition to seeing what they might have seen in him, he could be possibly, it's also seeing what God can do with people. I think often we don't have enough faith in God to see that this person who's lived a worldly life because they were in the world, they've come to Christ, that often we're scared of that, and we don't have enough faith to know that God can transform them. And
Yes.
Watching that happen is awesome, and we often lack faith and don't trust God can and does.
I'm sure there's all of us probably can look back and see somebody that we thought there is no way, there's no way, and like Dan, yeah, you'll never make it, but we don't know that, do we? We don't know what's in the heart. God knows what's in the heart. Thank you all.